Well, hello there, everyone. We're coming up on to the last week of the 2015 NFL regular season, so it has become kind of a pattern for me every week. I'm here to give you an updated 2016 NFL mock draft. Now, I believe last week I told you I was going to do a 2 or even 3 round version. Sorry, I lied. I only did a 1 round version, so you can check out all 31 picks of my 1 round mock in the description box down below. And as always, you're welcome to leave your thoughts and comments in the comments section below. Now, next week, once the regular season is over and the first 20 picks of order are set in stone, that's when I'll go ahead and probably do at least a 2 round, if not another 3 round mock draft. So, of course, you'll want to stay tuned for that. A couple of other things of note tying into the 2016 NFL Draft. Um, Coming up, once Week 17 finishes on Sunday, that's when I will begin team-by-team breakdowns of the 2015 season that was, and I'll go in draft order from pick 1 all the way down to the last 2 teams after Super Bowl 50. So I'll give a recap of what I thought of each team's 2015 season and what to expect in the offseason to come. Also, starting January 1st, what I will be doing is beginning my look at individual prospects for this upcoming year's NFL draft. And I'll be trying to get as many prospects done over the next few months as I possibly can. I'm going to be starting off with the biggest and most hyped names in the NFL draft media community. I'll be starting off with the quarterbacks as I typically do. And the first one you'll see on January 1st will be a scouting report on Carson Wentz. And then shortly after that, maybe a couple of scouting reports per day. You know, it could be a day or two where you don't have any, and then the next day you have 5 or 6. It just depends on when I can fit in the recording time, whatever. In terms of the quarterbacks that I'll be scouting at least early, you're going to have Carson Wentz, Paxton Lynch, Jared Goff, Connor Cook, Christian Hackenberg, Cardale Jones. Now, that's not necessarily a reflection of the fact that I think they're the best quarterbacks, all of them, in this upcoming draft class. It's just those are the ones with the biggest buzz and the most attention paid to them and probably the most interest in discussion about them. But again, I will go through all the different positions like that. I'll start off with the biggest names, and then as we go through, probably especially as you get into March and April, I'll go to the more of the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh round prospects and try to get as many scouting reports done as I possibly can. Anyways, on to the business at hand, and that is this mock draft. As some of you know, many of you should know that watch my mock drafts or pay attention to my mock drafts. This early in the process, I tend to be a very big fan of scenarios. And in general, throughout my mock drafts, I always play out different scenarios because that's what I'm trying to look at. If this happens, what goes here, here, here? If somebody does this happen here, here, here? So I've done that again here. This time, the philosophy was what happens if the quarterbacks drop a little bit? If you have one quarterback go very high, but the next quarterback doesn't get taken till the middle of the round, and the next quarterback doesn't get taken till closer to the end of round number 1. What would happen? What players would rise? What players would fall? How would the board shift? How would the draft play out? And that's what I've done here. I've still got Paxton Lynch going to the Cleveland Browns at number 2. There's probably going to be a new coach, a new general manager there. Either way, I think that organization is once and for all fed up and done with Manziel. They're going to need a new quarterback, and Paxton Lynch is probably going to be their guy. Oh, yes, at pick 14, there's personal bias in there. I'm a huge fan of Carson Wentz from North Dakota State, and if you follow me on Twitter, you know this. As I've said before, I felt that he might be the best quarterback prospect out of all in the 2016 NFL draft class, and I'm not necessarily backing away from that assessment. The Chicago Bears, sitting at 6-9 right now, they are a mediocre team. They're a team that is in the midst, hopefully, of a full and complete rebuild. And ultimately, until you get that young quarterback to build around, you're not rebuilding anything. Jay Cutler hasn't had a terrible year, but Jay Cutler still has some huge cap figures in the years to come. You know, he's been there since 2009. It's been 7 years. People have talked about he's played better, and in some ways you could argue it's his best season as a Chicago Bear, and the team is 6-9. You know, he is what he is after 7 years. And the Bears, in part, have kind of masked some of his deficiencies by playing a bit conservative, taking some of it out of Cutler's hands. You know, so it's kind of fool's gold in a little bit of a way. is this new regime under General Manager Ryan Pace, John Fox, are they wanting to give Cutler an 8th year in Chicago, a 9th year in Chicago, a 10th year in Chicago? Because if you're doing that, you're never going to get anywhere. You're just going to continue to spin your wheels and be picking somewhere between 10 to 20 every year in the NFL draft. At some point in time, the Bears have to find that quarterback. And while Carson Wentz might not be the most NFL ready right now, I think he has more upside than any quarterback prospect in this draft. A true dual threat quarterback with the size to play the position, the arm strength to play the position, the mobility and athleticism to fit the modern dual threat NFL quarterback. And for the Bears sitting there at 14, if you wanted to bring back Jay Cutler for 2016 and have Carson Wentz sit on the bench for the year, so be it. But at some point in time, the quarterback position has to be addressed, and it has to be addressed highly. And when I look at some of the other players that would potentially be available in those immediate picks right after pick 14, I could make an argument for a guy like Jalen Ramsey or a Carl Nassib or a Kendall Fuller. I could make an argument for maybe somebody like a Desmond King, but I can't make incredibly compelling arguments. And in this draft that I don't think is particularly great in terms of its talent and depth, especially at the top, if I'm going to gamble at any position, and especially a position of need, I'm going to gamble on the quarterback position with somebody like a Carson Wentz. So yes, would I get a hard on and probably come in my pants if they drafted Carson Wentz in round number 1? Your answer is yes. And then I've got Jared Goff falling to number 22 to the Houston Texans. It's one of these things everybody will automatically assume because Bill O'Brien had Hackenberg at Penn State that automatically means he wants to have that guy. That philosophy doesn't always play out. You remember with the Bills, you had Doug Marrone. They ended up drafting E.J. Emmanuel in the first round. Nassib fell all the way to round 4. Years back, people thought that Pete Carroll was going to take Taylor Mays. He took Earl Thomas instead. The college stuff is nice, but the NFL is not for long if you go with that type of philosophy where just because you had him in college means you have to have him in the pros. It's not a guarantee. I think Goff would represent a pretty good value for the Texans at this point in time. Clearly their biggest position of need on either side of the ball. They have to find that young quarterback. And in this case, for the Houston Texans, if Goff even got past 14 to the Bears, they really would have to explore, in my opinion, trading up and perhaps giving up a few picks to go get a guy, because they got to get a guy, because at the end of the day, they're not going to get past a certain point if they don't get that young quarterback to build around. So that's kind of the way I look at it. It's very possible that the quarterbacks could drop because you've got Carson Wentz, played in a small program like North Dakota State, coming off of an injury to his throwing wrist that cost him the second half of his season. Jared Goff, even though he played at California, played in the Pac-12, you're talking about a guy that had some really good games, but against some good competition, he had some not-so-good games. So it's very possible that this is another situation where some of these quarterback prospects are a little bit overvalued and a little bit overrated by the draft media, in particular in the cases of guys like Jared Goff and Connor Cook. And as a result, what could happen is people could be surprised as the process goes along that some of these quarterbacks drop. Now, with as quarterback needy of a league as this is, and with the number of teams picking in the top half of the draft that could potentially use a quarterback, it's very possible that 3 of them go in the top 12 and 14 picks. It's very, very possible. But I think it's just as possible, if not more possible, that only one of them goes in the top 5 or 10 and a couple of them drop a little bit farther into round number 1. So that's mostly what I wanted to talk about here. You can look at some of my other picks and give me your thoughts and comments in the comments section below. Like I said, again, next week I will have probably at least a 2-round mock-up, if not a 3-round mock-up, which will be a little bit easier for me because the first 20 picks of the draft order will be set in stone. And I'll have a better idea for sure as I sit back and revisit the year that was for those teams in terms of what they may be looking for, what their philosophies might be. That's kind of the way I look at it. And then you'll start to get an idea, too, of some of the coaching changes because that has some impact, too. It's kind of hard to do some of these mock drafts because now, like with Philadelphia just firing Chip Kelly, it was a little bit harder for me to do a mock draft as opposed to the last couple of mock drafts I had done it where the Eagles took Carson Wentz under the assumption that Chip Kelly was still there because it was his chance to get a Marcus Mariota type of guy to run his system, the type of guy that he needed. He's probably going to try and go to Tennessee and get his Marcus Mariota guy to run his system. We'll see. So again, that's my mock draft. Stay tuned for some other videos. Remember, come the first of the year, I'll be starting the prospect scouting reports. I'll start after week 17 as in the books. I'll start team-by-team recaps of the 2015 NFL season. So stay tuned for all of that. And check out some of the other crap on this channel too, damn it.